Good morning and welcome to this Friday's episode of Inside Workplace Wellbeing. Delighted to be to be joined this morning by Nella Dwyer, who is a neurodiversity consultant and an ADHD coach. The whole topic around inclusion is something that I'm very passionate about myself. Inclusion is inclusion, no matter what. It's bringing everyone to the table. And that's why I'm delighted that Nella is joining us here this morning to have this important conversation. Nella, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Dolores. Delighted to be here. Beautiful morning actually here in Kinsale. I don't know what it's like with you, but
You're in Kinsale. Yeah, it's not too bad here in Galway. It's bright anyway, and I'm looking out at the brightness. So that's always a good start. I'm just checking that we're live, and we are. So Nella, I'd love to start off, I suppose, by letting you introduce yourself to us. Because as well as being a neurodivergent coach, a consultant and an ADHD coach, you're also a singer-songwriter. And this whole blending of these two streams, I'd love you to talk to us more about it and about your journey from one to the other. And how did that happen?
Oh God, we need more time. So I guess as you said, I've been a singer-songwriter since I've been gigging since I was 17. I won't tell you how old I am now. And had a lot of success with it. Always felt I was a bit different. Just thought I didn't fit in sort of anywhere. But that was put down to, I guess, being an artist, which a lot of artists can get overlooked when they are neurodivergent because we often are, they're flighty and they're creative or whatever. So I was never picked up. But so I guess I had a few number ones in Ireland. I sing in the biggest video game in the world, World of Warcraft. It's over 150 million players. I tour China, I tour the world with Video Games Live, or the orchestra and the choir as a singer, etc., etc. I work with a lot of Emmy and Grammy winning composers. So one would think that I would just have stayed with that, and that was the plan. But I guess then a family member got diagnosed with ADHD. And I remember thinking, absolutely not. They're really intelligent. They're super smart. They're not bouncing off the walls, etc., etc. Typical kind of old-fashioned way of or I suppose it's nobody's fault, but I guess it's the old style way of thinking about what ADHD is. And now we have a lot more information. So then I read what ADHD was. I was like, oh my God, this is me. And my story kind of started there. So I got diagnosed. I got an ADHD coach, and it changed my life very, very quickly. And then I sort of felt like, okay, I've just opened this whole portal, this whole new world of understanding myself. I can't really gatekeep this. And I realized that, it's not anything to do with intelligence. It's not a bad brain. It's just a very different brain. It's got a very different operating system. It's an incredibly different blueprint. And there's a lot of strengths that actually now I realize contributed to a lot of my successes in the music business as well. So I trained to be an ADHD coach, spent a year doing that. And for the last sort of 5 years, I've been coaching people one-to-one, from CEOs of multinational companies to C-suites of NGOs and multinational companies to solopreneurs, engineers, self-employed people, creative professionals. And it's been incredible. So I guess now I have these two careers. So I live between, Kinsale and Los Angeles, and I've got some, one-to-one clients. I do neurodiversity consultancy with a large NGO and some multinational companies, and basically helping them to understand what ADHD is, what neurodiversity is, what it is not, and the strengths, and how to actually understand how to create an ecosystem that works for everybody, not just giving accommodations. It's not about just, well, how can we sort of, give more to help support this person from, the goodness of our heart and sort of social responsibility. It's not about that, actually. It's about everybody rising up together when we just understand that it's a very, very different operating system that requires a totally different approach.
Oh, I wrote down the word there, fitting in and flighty, as you mentioned yourself. And I mean, the whole thing about, this whole, like, my whole life's work is about belonging. And it's such the opposite to fitting in. And like, a lot of my life has also been molding myself to try and fit in, because again, we have this perceived notion that this is the way we have to be. But oh my goodness, as you say yourself, like, the different operating systems that we all have, And that's why this is so important, these kind of conversations. It's the education piece, because we're all different. You know, we're all different. Even if we're neurotypical, we're all different. And that's what it is about. Everybody can't be a CEO, nor does everybody want to be. You know, not everybody wants to be a receptionist or a hotel manager. We all have our own strengths. And it's that education piece that's what we really are here to discuss today, isn't it? And helping people understand then that, like, this isn't anything wrong with anyone. It's just a different operating system.
Absolutely. Yep, 100%. And through all the people I've worked with, it's just proven it time and time and time again, you know. I think that's the kind of beautiful thing about my, like, you know, being a bit selfish about it from my own point of view. Everybody that I work with, or every company that I work with, and I work with neurodiverse, you know, people who are neurodiverse, like myself, it's just so obvious that it is a very specific blueprint. Obviously, we're all different, but there's an incredible, you know, amount of strengths that just come along with being neurodivergent, and it's just sort of different, good and bad, than the neurotypical brain, right? So how could people who are neurodiverse thrive in an environment that maybe was not created for how their brain works, right? So it's not that we need to create accommodations or create, well, we do, but, you know, it's not that it's just about creating, you know, as I said, like, accommodations for people who are neurodiverse. It's about leveraging the strengths of people who have ADHD or who are neurodiverse. And again, that aids the company, that aids the person, that stops sick days, overwhelm, burnout. Most people come to me when they're, you know, at burnout or have experienced burnout and don't want to again, or are on the way to it. Because, as you said, they're trying to operate in a sort of a system that was not ever designed for them. And actually, it's stifling their creativity, it's stifling their well-being, it's stifling their happiness, it's stifling their sense of self, their confidence, their trust in themselves, that they can sort of perform like everyone else, even though they know that they can. Yeah, I'm probably rambling a little bit, but
no, you're not, because I'm going to pick two different things out of that and delve a bit deeper into it. So the fact that you're a singer-songwriter, the way I look at this now, and this is just my opinion, like, I would often say I'm a more right-brained person, and I look at that as my strength. And when I work in workplaces, I bring in the left brain as a diagnostic tool. I didn't invent it, but I bring it in with me. I always thought that was the perfect union for me, the left brain and the right brain. And, like, when I hear you talking there about this creative side of you, do you think that there is a connection between? I know that I know my answer to this, but I'd love to hear what you say, and it's my impression again of it. Is there a link between being able to be more creative when you have a neurodivergent brain rather than a neurotypical? And maybe, actually, if you want to, I suppose, how do you define both of those, neurotypical and neurodivergent, just for someone that's listening to this for the very first time? Maybe I'll start with that, and then you can go into the little bit about, you know, do you see the neurodivergent as being more creative?
Yeah. I might answer your first one first. That's how my brain works, because
okay.
You know, an answer, and that's going to distract me from answering the second, and that'll probably give you an answer to the other one as well. Anyway,
that's okay.
So thank you. So I guess can you phrase it again? Just because I could just talk a million things about it, but phrase that sentence again for me.
Yeah. So, you know, creativity to me, like, I feel I'm a more creative person than I am. Like, I'm not an accounts person, let's say. I'm not the very structured left brain. And I'm just thinking about this. Do you feel that neurodivergent brain is more right-brained, especially when you talked about being a creative singer-songwriter, which is a creative way to be?
So this kind of feeds into some of the strengths of ADHD. So basically, and again, you know, how long have we learned about how our neurotypical brain works our entire lives? So I'm not going to be able to explain. There is literally that amount to talk about with the neurodivergent brain. So I'm not going to explain this in a nutshell. So forgive me for making it simplistic. However, so I suppose executive functioning can be an issue for us with ADHD unless we have the right environment, or, you know, we've incorporated different working modalities that then ignite that, and we can really, really succeed very well. Anyway, so one of those things, one of the reasons that executive functioning can be difficult for us, and what is that? It means executing a function of our brain, and that can be memory, time. So my daughter just came to the door, and she's going off to work. I was like, no, wait. Oh, she's fine. Okay. Sorry. So, and we get distracted easily. Anyway, so I guess the executive functioning, the reason I'm talking about that is because one of the strengths of ADHD is being great at problem solving, very creative. Okay, so they feed into each other. Why? Because ADHD brain, the H in ADHD is hyperactivity. So often we think that that means physical. Actually, it means hyperactivity of the brain. What does that mean? We get lots of thoughts at the exact same time. So those of us with ADHD have to, in real time, at all times, decide, so problem solve, decide which thought to execute. Okay, so if I'm getting 12 responses I want to say to Dolores, I have to, in real time, my entire life, execute the function of, or decide, problem solve in real time, which one I'm going to say to you, right? So that's why we can be very, very creative, because our brains are natural problem solvers. We're great in a crisis. You see a lot of people with ADHD who are in very high pressure environments and they perform very well. However, if we don't understand how our brains work, we can end up in overwhelm and burnout. So I'm talking, think, CEOs, stock market, police force, ambulance, anything actually that has a high pressure environment can be very good for us. However, and we often really, really outperform others. However, it can lead to overwhelm and burnout if we don't know what else we need. So I suppose to answer your question, is there a relationship between being creative and with ADHD? Absolutely. I've never come across somebody with ADHD who does not get incredible ideas. Again, for every strength of ADHD, or for every symptom or trait of ADHD, on the other side is an absolute strength, 100%. I've just seen it. It's been studied. It's I've seen it every time. So, for example, being creative and getting, and being a great problem solver and being a innovative, thought generator, idea generator, business generator, idea generator, is amazing. That's a strength. However, on the other side, when we get so many of them, that can be very overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming, and it can also lead to frustration that we haven't seen all of these ideas through to fruition. Then we feel like a failure, when actually my job is to kind of step back and go, hang on a second, you've had all these amazing ideas. It's just, we haven't been able to sort of approach it from a neurodivergent point of view of applying totally different working modalities to how we approach each one. And we can see them through. And then how could that be bad, right? So for every, and it's not about glamorizing ADHD, absolutely not. It can be incredibly tough, but are we creative? Absolutely. Does that mean that we can't also be able to, I suppose you said the right and left brain, can we be type A or type whatever? As you said, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different, different strengths, different weaknesses, different symptoms, different traits. However, the blueprint of how ADHD works is very clear. Obviously, we all have different strengths and different traits and whatever. But I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the way you describe it so well. I mean, the H, to me, the hyper, I never looked at it as in, I always looked at it as in the more physical. But when you say that it's hyperactive activity of the mind, yes, that really opens a huge portal for me to understand it better and to understand someone very close to me better.
Yeah. And I suppose there's a reason why, if you have ADHD, you're 600% more likely, they say, to be an entrepreneur, to work for yourself. And that there's many reasons for that.
There is many reasons for that.
Yeah. And I suppose I just think back, I always tell the story of, when I was 21, and if she's watching, hey, I worked in a gym, I won't say where, but maybe she's watching. Oh, it's funny. Anyway, and I remember asking requesting that the CEO comes into the boardroom to have a meeting with me, the receptionist, because I could see how she was operating the management teams was just not effective at all. And I could see a very, very clear, better way. And that's a strength of it. And she was like, who is your one? And somebody said to me after, you were actually right, but you have some cheek to bringing in the CEO, So we can often be, very good at problem solving. And that's when you can see friction at work sometimes, when you're being told what to do. ADHDers hate rules unless we come up with the rules, and we totally, authenticity is also very important to us. We come up with the rules with the person, and we absolutely believe in the rules. Then we'll be the biggest instigator of the rules, because justice sensitivity is also a strength of ADHD.
Can I stop you there, actually, because I want to, so that's huge, what you just said there. how then, or maybe you prefer me not to stop you, but like,
No, it's fine.
if someone with ADHD or the neurodivergent brain hates rules,
Mm-hmm.
and you say that causes real friction, this is where then do companies sort of, I suppose, it's at onboarding. If somebody is afraid, and there is statistics to say that a lot of people with neurodivergent brain don't say that because they're afraid they won't get hired.
Yes.
So where then, like, how do team dynamics work if someone hasn't said that they have a neurodivergent brain and they don't like taking rules? How can that be married in a company?
Yeah, so I suppose I have three answers. Example at the same time. I have three. Well, I probably have a lot more once I start talking. My brain will anyway. So I suppose number one, education. That's why when I go into a company, I will do a needs analysis to see what are the needs of the company. It's like a doctor. A doctor can't give a prescription without knowing the symptoms. So I'm not going to go in and say, this is what you need to know. Maybe they don't, right? That's why even my one-to-one coaching is very bespoke to the person. So there's no point in me saying, otherwise I'll just send you a course, right? So I suppose number one, education. So companies need to be educated on understanding what ADHD is, what neurodiversity actually means. It does not mean, oh God, we have to give this person a lot extra. Actually, you're totally not leveraging what you could be leveraging. People with ADHD are extremely great, as I said, problem solvers. We're extremely great. Extremely great, is that a word? We're great. We're great at being creative. So there's Microsoft understand. There's a lot of big companies understand this. They're starting to implement it. But if there's a boardroom full of executives and they're trying to solve a problem, they know to bring in somebody with ADHD, because the person with ADHD go, yeah, just do this. Because again, the hyperactivity of the brain, we have to always try and problem solve in our brain which thought we're going to execute. And I'm kind of just like, there's so much to talk about. That's just one specific thing I suppose I'm going back to. We can often be, so I suppose to answer, because I could keep going on that tangent, if you understand, so education, I suppose, number one, if you understand what ADHD actually means as an employer, as a HR manager, as a CEO, as a solopreneur hiring somebody, if you understand what the strengths and weaknesses are, number one, you can hire not like the rest of you, which is great, right? Obviously, you don't hire lots of people with the same strengths and the same weaknesses. You understand that maybe that person is not the person to, do all the administration, follow up on lots of emails. Maybe they're the person that goes in with the design team to come up with all the ideas, or they have a creative way of doing the marketing, advertising, whatever it is, I had some back when I used to have like real jobs at 9 to 5 until maybe 24, 25. I was advertising executive of Hot Press magazine, and I was also a receptionist of gyms. And in some of I won't say which ones, but in some of those jobs, the person who hired me could see, I didn't know I had ADHD, but they could see my strengths, and they put me in when they put me on the street, basically with leaflets and getting people in, I sold so many memberships to the gym. Now, at the end of the day, was I absolutely crap at, was loads of the admin list not ticked? Yep, that was me too. But I sold them. I made them a lot of money, Same with when I was on Hopper. I made them a lot of money because I was great on the phone. We're usually very great. We're usually great sort of personality to often add fun to a room. So to answer your question, to go back to your question, okay, they don't like the rules. How do you manage that? You ask them to come up with the rules with you. You see how it makes sense for everybody. There was something else I really wanted to say to do with, how do you, so I suppose education is really important. So, I suppose I do trainings with companies, trainings on understanding all the strengths of ADHD, how you can hire and put people in roles that, how you can sort of understand when you're in the hiring process, the strengths of the person, so that you can put them in roles or environments. Our environment is incredibly important for somebody with ADHD as well. And so I suppose, there was one more thing I wanted to say that was really important about hiring, education. I don't know, it's gone.
It'll come back to you. But I love that. I think that is huge. The whole being in the right environment, because
sorry. Can I interject, because it was a good point? I think helpful. So I had a client, and I worked with him for about a year, one-to-one client. When he came to me, he basically was one of the founders of the company, and he was not getting shares in the company because his performance review kept saying that his style of communication was not helpful. He was putting in very hard boundaries and it wasn't working. His time was not great, and there was something else. So turns out when he came to me, he said, I'm not getting shares in this company that I'm a director of, and maybe not director, sorry, I think he was just below that. So anyway, for whatever reason, the performance review basically was not designed for how his brain works. So we worked together, we implemented different time boundaries so that he was actually now, able to respond to people, telling them when, because people with ADHD don't have personal boundaries usually in place. And that's a whole other talk. But anyway, so basically, I'm trying to make this long story short, which never works out for me. I gave him a neurodiversity in the workplace manual I made up to give to his employer so that they could understand the reason why they hired him, the reason why he's incredible at his job, but also the things that, you're marking him on that isn't actually how his brain works. So what happened was they redid the performance review, understanding what they actually need to look at, because they weren't leveraging all of his incredible ideas, which is the very reason that he kind of was there at the beginning and the success of the company. And they were measuring him on what time he showed up or clocked in. They were measuring him, and ADHDers don't measure in time. We measure in dopamine. We measure in energy. Energy is so important for us, managing our energy and measuring things in dopamine. So, once they did that, they changed the performance review for everybody, that it would be, that it would make sense for everybody. And within a couple of months, he basically had, all the shares in the company. He was promoted. I think, I can't remember exactly the roles that they were. It was but a year or two ago. And everybody was happy. The company was flourishing even more because they were actually understanding they were having the right conversation. They weren't sort of going in blind thinking, well, he's just this, he's just that. No, that's not actually what the actual factual case was. And so, it's education is huge. And, as you said, I could go on and on. As you said, there's a few things that's been standout points to you. That's how uneducated we all are as a whole on what ADHD actually is, what neurodiversity actually is. It is not something to have to just accommodate. It's about leveraging it so that there's no sick days, there's no people having to quit their jobs. The amount of unnecessary situations I've seen with people just being so overwhelmed and burnt out because they're being put in situations, roles, environments, whatever it is, structures that don't work for them, and the company's losing out, and everybody's not happy, nothing's working. Companies are spending huge money trying to rehire, and it's a hamster wheel that doesn't need to happen, actually.
I love that totally. One thing I want to ask you about is, what do you mean when you say that someone with a neurodiverse or neurodiversity manages things in dopamine? I'm fascinated with that, and to hear more about that, because one of the understandings I got from from delving into this myself, not an expert by any stretch, but just learning more about it, is that, and you can correct me on this if I have picked it up wrong, is that my understanding was that someone that has a neurodiverse brain doesn't have a dopamine pump naturally. So there's nothing stimulates. It's hard to find something that stimulates them, especially in the classroom, or when kids are young. It's like we're always told, find something they like. But if somebody finds it hard, that it's not naturally, it doesn't just come naturally. Talk to me a little bit about dopamine, if you don't mind.
Sure. So ADHD is a deficit of interest, can be described as a deficit of interest and a strength of hyperfocus. Okay, so we call it a disability because it's we're disabled from performing in the way that other people typically perform. Okay, so it's not a great word, but so it is so I'll say it again. So ADHD is a deficit of interest and a strength of hyperfocus. When we are interested in something, we can absolutely flourish. When we are not interested in something, it's not about how to find it more interesting, it's what's blocking your interest. So we often have the intent, but we don't have the interest, and then we can't have the attention to get the ignition to start. So when we have the intention to do something, we need to have the interest piece. And usually it's, okay, well, what is blocking my interest? So that's a little bit about sort of how ADHD works in a very, very small way. With dopamine, if you can imagine a neurotypical brain, this is very simplistic, and
that's what we want, simplistic explanations.
in essence, so this is a neurotypical brain, and these dopamine robbers are taking away dopamine like this at a steady, even pace. Okay. With ADHD, these dopamine robbers are taking it away too fast. So we need something to stimulate them to slow down. So a stimulant like ADHD medication, like exercise, like interest, like risk, like reward, like shock, good or bad, ADHD brain does not differentiate, will allow these dopamine robbers to slow down. So now we have more dopamine available. So, if you take an ADHD stimulant, or you take a neurotropic, or you do exercise, it's not giving us dopamine, it's slowing down the taking away of dopamine. So that's
what's taken away what is a dopamine robber? I'm sorry for all the questions, but I'm just fascinated with the way you explain everything.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's the receptors of the brain that basically are, managing the neurotransmitters,
Okay.
So they're basically coming in, and as I said, it's in a neurotypical brain, this is how it works. They're receptors coming in and they're taking away dopamine. That's just how it works in the brain. So it's all in the front of the brain. If you scan your brain, you can see ADHD. It's all dark at the front of the brain. So basically ours is too fast taking it away. So that's why often we can speak very fast, because our brains are afraid that we won't get all the things in our head out. So we can often feel like we have a bit of a motor in our back. We need to get it all out. People always say, slow down, you're talking too fast. I know, but I'm afraid I'll forget all my great ideas and they'll be gone forever. So I guess we measure things. We don't measure things in time. We often have time blindness, again, because our brain is focused on an interesting thing at that time. So, and also we're also waiting for a risk or a reward. Even when I was sort of, before this interview, I know what I'm doing and I know how to manage it now, but, I was scrolling on social media, waiting till kind of, okay, now I have 20 minutes. Now there's urgency. Now I'll get ready, and that's not a great way to operate. I don't always do that, but at least I understand why I'm doing it, because now there's risk that, I might be late. So now I get motivated, right? Now, if I had done my personal training this morning, I wouldn't have probably done that. So it's about understanding that, instead of going for the unhealthy forms of dopamine, which is, that risk reward, waiting to the last minute to complete a task because we know we'll get it done then, or drugs, drink, alcohol, sex, whatever it might be, or gossiping, or looking for drama, or all the kind of negative things we don't want. If we incorporate exercise, which again slows down these dopamine robbers, helps our executive functioning, therefore helping our time, etc., then that really helps. So, measuring things in time doesn't work for us. We measure it in excitement, in risk, in reward. So that's why when I work with somebody or with a company, they need to have anchors implemented in their week to build their life around. Otherwise, we can often stay in waiting mode. And so, yeah, anchors are incredibly important for ADHD. They're, I suppose, increments of things that we can build our life around. Even if you're self-employed, really important that you either are meeting Mary every day at 1 o'clock or something. Otherwise, we can just waste time and just sit in procrastination and waiting mode. So there's so many different working modalities, once you understand how your brain works, that you can apply that make you live a very, very happy, successful life without the overwhelm, without the burnout, without the anxiety, depression. We often get misdiagnosed early with depression, but often that's because we have been operating from not understanding what we actually need. And that's a big part of what I do one-to-one with people, is helping them to kind of build their personal operations manual of how they work from the ground up again, because often we have no idea how people would even describe us. So, understanding what our actual needs are, and they're very different needs to somebody who is neurotypical. And that can be environment is one of the biggest ones, which again feeds into the workplace. If you're in just a wide open space with lots of sounds and everything like that, and lots of distractions, and lots of people asking you to do lots of things it's just a recipe for disaster for somebody with ADHD. So environment is incredibly important. So again, I could go on and on, but I've probably went off on about 10 tangents.
No, you haven't, and I love it, and I'm really learning an awful lot. Like, this really is something that, in my opinion, for what it's worth, should be taught, or the teachers maybe, or like could be incorporated into their learnings. Because if imagine a child learning this at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, rather than struggling through those early years, because it's the whole thing about fitting in. sit down, don't stand up, why are you fidgeting, stop doing this, stop doing that. It's an awful lot of negativity, I would imagine, that a younger person has to deal with. You know, they're trying to understand themselves, and then when they go into the teen years, there's more things, and for neurotypical and neurodivergent people, but then to feel a little bit more different if you're neurodiverse, but don't understand why. I just feel this whole thing around belonging and fitting in, we need more of this, and we need it from a younger age.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's just, you know, I think a lot of people are afraid of the label of ADHD. And, you know, I was, you know, big hippie when I was younger. Still am at heart, plastic hippie. Wear all the makeup and I drink from plastic bottles. I know I shouldn't, but, you know, I still would be a bit of a hippie at heart. I was always sort of against labels, against medication, all that. And I've really, really changed my mind on a lot of things to do with that, because I think ADHD is the one label that really gives people so much validation. You know, when I first meet people and they're telling me their story and I'm putting names on their experiences, like, well, that's called this, and that's called this. And and I mean, like, I'm at the point, which is such, and I'm not trying to say I'm great. It's just, I feel so grateful to be at the point that there's not one problem that somebody with ADHD comes to me with that I don't know a name for, and a thing that works really well, or a multitude of sort of different ways that we approach it that just works so well. And that is just freedom for me, for them, so I guess what I'm saying is, you know, there's, when you're diagnosed, I suppose earlier you're actually diagnosed, that's not a bad thing to say, oh, well, they have ADHD. It's the education around it that is the problem, that our understanding is that there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
They need more help. They need more. Yes, they do, but it's just different help. It's not that they're going to excel in these things. I mean, most of us with ADHD, especially girls, because I'm a woman, I suppose. So, you know, girls will often go inwards. So, you know, as children and teenagers, they'll go introspective, which can cause a lot of problems. But, you know, it's and boys will kind of be more outwardly, maybe, you know, obvious if they have ADHD. But if you can understand why, then you can understand what they need, you know. And if you can understand what somebody needs, there is no problem. You understand? Do you know what I mean? So most of us with ADHD who are girls or women, you know, our report cards are all the same. You know, highly intelligent, but must try harder, needs to stop distracting their peers, needs to stop looking out the window, doing great in this subject, and this subject, but needs to apply themselves in these subjects. Actually, that girl is just very probably misunderstood. If they have ADHD, they had an interest in these subjects and they were not interested in these subjects. Okay, what's blocking their interest? Maybe, you know, if whatever, I could go on and on, but, you know, there's lots of different ways that we can make that.
But one idea as to what could be blocking their interest?
Well, I was really bad at maths. I didn't see how I ever would need it in life, which was true, actually. You know, I couldn't understand why I needed to learn this, because I'm much better and much more interested in English, history, music, biology a bit. You know, so for me, authentically, it didn't make sense that I needed to struggle and be really upset and work really hard at this thing that just wasn't going into my brain, because I'm not interested in it. I don't see how I need it. And I'm really bad at it. So now I'm running away because I feel shameful, and I don't have any trust or confidence in myself that I'm even going to be able to do it, because I keep being told, why are you not able to do this? You're bad at this, rather than maybe an approach that would have been like, okay, what way are you understanding this? Why are you not interested in this? Or you're not interested in this? Are you? No. Okay. What could make it more interesting? Okay. What about if we body double with another child, and, you know, you get to listen to, you know, your favorite TV show in the background? Because if somebody with ADHD is listening to something in the background that they're really interested in, now their executive functioning is working, and now they can actually focus. So when we say, oh, they're getting distracted, or they're coloring in school, let them, because if they're coloring in, then they're actually interested in what they're doing here. Now their executive functioning is working. They're actually absorbing the information. Whereas if I'm looking at the teacher who's telling me about maths, my brain has got a million other places thinking about something more interesting. So I'm not absorbing the information. And with executive functioning, dopamine, this is fascinating actually, dopamine is the neurotransmitter that is responsible for creating memory. If we don't have dopamine in that moment, then no memory is being created and no memory is being stored. So if you leave your keys down somewhere inside the house that you weren't interested in, and your brain is somewhere else, and the memory you're looking for, you know, you're like, where did I leave the keys? Why can't I remember? Because you actually didn't have the dopamine available in your brain to create a memory. So the memory you're looking for doesn't exist. So that's why, anyway, it all plays into each other. But
no, totally. And there is just a comment there from Maureen saying enlightening. And, you know, it is, you're describing it in a way that's really, really helpful. Because you know what, there are so many people that have neurodiverse brains, and it's okay. This is the thing.
It's honestly okay. People with ADHD often have kind of very high intelligence, and that's what leads to frustration, because we often know we're capable, but we just don't know why we're not able to get there. And that's when I meet people, and you know, we really look back at, well, let's look at anything you've achieved in the past. And I have never, ever met somebody with ADHD who doesn't have a absolute past of incredible achievements, whether they believe they're achievements or not. Because ADHD is the now or the not now. If it's not happening now, I don't feel like I've ever done it. But if we don't take confidence and understand the strengths innately that it took to achieve all these things in our past, how the heck could we have confidence that we can do anything else in the future, right? So that's why I work with people building themselves up from the ground up from a multitude of different approaches, so that they actually fully understand what is actually attributed to all their past successes, so that they can take them and we can work with them to get them to their goals much faster, with much more validation, much more trust in themselves and confidence. And it's the same with companies, you know, because I think that's kind of the sort of important. It's all, yeah. Anyway, so I could go on and on.
No, and it's great. And I am so delighted that you are going to be speaking at the event in Galway that I'm running in conjunction with National Workplace Wellbeing Day. And I'm just going to put that across there where, come on. I don't know why it's not working here for me. Sure. Okay. So basically what you are talking about is, and I love this, neurodivergent talent, the competitive edge your workplace is overlooking. And I think from our conversation this morning, that is certainly such a positive, because if somebody that has this wonderful ability to problem solve, to see the bigger picture, to be able to go this, but doesn't feel psychologically safe in a workplace, maybe hasn't got the confidence to tell their employers, then they leave because maybe they're feeling like they don't fit in, because it's that constant, like, you know, all the dopamine robbers aren't being, I'm probably saying this wrong, but I'm just trying to formulate what you say, you know, they can't fit in or feel like they belong in a company. That's so expensive for companies then to go ahead then and try and find someone new. They've lost a wonderful talent. So it's really this understanding that when we are inclusive, and that's why I've Maria Walsh MEP talking about inclusion and diversity as well at the event, because I want these conversations talked about more so that we can understand them more and bring everyone to the table. And, you know, our future leaders, and for people that are struggling in companies, I mean, I can, as a person that I think I'm neurotypical, but I know that there's part of me that I would say, yeah, I'm a bit like that as well. So I'd say I border on the edge there somewhere, but it's great for all of us to understand ourselves more even, so that we can reach our full potential. And that's what it's all about, self-mastery over self, so that we can be the best in our personal lives and in our work life.
Absolutely. And it is the company's responsibility to educate themselves on understanding what it is and what it isn't, because that's where it starts, you know, and especially if somebody that, you know, is neurodivergent, they're going to hire a lot of neurodivergent people. That's what happens a lot, which is really interesting, because then there's a lot of miscommunications and lack of boundaries and built up frustration.
Unconsciously, do you think? Or is it a conscious decision, or is it just unconsciously that they hire?
Unconsciously. So ADHDers gravitate towards other ADHDers because our brains fire in the same way. When we're interrupting, we don't mind, because our brains are just firing in lots of different ideas. We can go back to the thing. That's how our brains work, because it's stimulating, because it's interesting, right? We're not just staying on the one point. So if somebody is hiring, you know, this is a whole other kettle of fish, but if somebody is hiring and they are, whether they know it or not, if they are neurodivergent or if they have ADHD, they will, or ADHD, autistic or ASD and ADHD, 70% of people who are on the spectrum also have ADHD. So if you work with ADHD, it usually helps their lives a lot, with a slightly different lens. But anyway, so yes, so they will hire people who they like, who are like them, who they can say, oh yeah, they're like me, I'm here. So that means they make sense to be here. And it can cause a lot of problems if, you know, they don't understand what the actual sort of situation is, or how to leverage and you know, the innovation of that person, because there's nothing worse than being in a job where they do not see your potential, even though you do, and you're being told every day that you're not performing in this, and this, when you're like, well, those things don't matter. Look what I am doing. So it is the company's responsibility, and it's in their interest to leverage the neurodivergent people that work there, because there's only positives to be gained for everybody, really. And I've worked with companies that they've made a lot more impact and a lot more financial gain, let's say, from actually understanding what they are dealing with. Otherwise, you're all just not having the right conversation, or the actual factual conversation about what's going on, or there's just it's just a travesty, when you see. And for me, I can kind of see very clearly what might be going on, and again, it's ultimately up to the companies to understand how to leverage their neurodivergent. Whether the person, by the way, even understands if they're neurodivergent or not themselves, again, that's up to training in a company, so that they understand when to spot it, so they know what strengths that person's going to have, so what roles to put them in, or what conversations to have with them. Get their innovation.
I love that. I think we've lost you there temporarily, just frozen a bit, but I'm delighted that you're speaking at the event in Galway. Yes, you're back to us now again, but I'm delighted to have you in Galway. Speaking more about this, I have it there going across the bottom: the neurodivergent talent, the competitive edge your workplace is overlooking. And it's going to really add to the conversation so much. This is workplace well-being. This is what it's all about to me. I started off by saying my whole life journey is about the word belonging. Everything I do is around that, through my own life experience as well, and stop there again trying to fit in and mold myself. And it's about being allowed to be ourselves and bringing our strengths, because we all have strengths and we all have something to give. And especially in teams, why would we want all left-brainers? Why would we want all right-brainers? We blend everything together so that we have this wonderful balance of the innovative, the people that can talk and create, but then we also need the people to bring this into action, to bring these to do the accounts, to do everything. So and that to me is the essence of inclusion. Inclusion is inclusion. Bring everyone to the table. Nella, we could talk forever, and I know that for a fact, and I just love listening to you. Now, I know on your website, which I'm going to put up there, that you do have a free offering, because I know I have listened to it. You can tell us a little bit about that. I have that going across the edge there, ADHD lifemastery.org. If you can let people know if they want to dip in and get that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So there's it's almost 1 hour free webinar all about sort of the beginning of understanding what ADHD is and what it's not. So you'll get a lot of understandings from that. I suppose on my website there's some more offerings. You can have a look about maybe applying to work with me one-on-one. I have some spaces this year, and then also I have a course there as well, and another few pending, just so I can sort of help more people without burning out myself. So please feel free to go there. Thanks for saying that, Dolores. But I think it's interesting you said about the belonging, and you just made me realize something. I think that's the wonderful thing about everything that I've experienced in the last few years, from my diagnosis to my training to my to getting coaching, to get to doing my training, and then working with people for years and some of the most incredible brains in the world, is actually I feel like I belong in the world. I think that's actually sums up my personal experience. And when people, when I work with people, or people, understand their brains, I think that's the beautiful thing about it, really, to sum it up, is that you actually feel like you do belong. It was a totally different manual that you never had. I always say it's like having a Apple manual for a Microsoft brain, or the other way around. You just never had the manual of how your brain works and how to be in the driver's seat of your life, and I think that just by what you just said, you just made me realize, actually, I don't go anywhere in the world now where I don't feel like I belong, other than maybe very loud environments, and I'll just put in my noise cancelling AirPods, but so it's there's only positives to be gained for everybody, really, and I think that's not to glamorize it, but it's about flipping the script on people really understanding what we're talking about, not what, the old-fashioned ways of thinking about ADHD and neurodiversity, that it's just a bad thing. It's absolutely not. It's just not factually true, Anyway, I'll stop rambling.
No, I know. As I say, I could listen to you forever. So if you want to hear Nella in person, where Nella will be speaking at the Workplace Wellness Reset event that I'm running in Galway in conjunction with IBEX National Workplace Wellbeing Day. Delighted to have her join us. I just soak up all this information. Again, the name of it is Neurodivergent Talent, the competitive edge your workplace is overlooking. That's what Nella will be speaking about. We also have Shay McConnon, who is the founder of An Even Better Place to Work. So he's going to be talking a lot about workplace culture. But again, like what Nella talks about here, Shay is very much about employee needs, a needs-driven approach. I think everyone that's speaking at this event is perfect for it for that reason, because it's all about how to feel like you belong. We also have Danielle Serpico speaking at the event, and she's an NLP master, and she's talking about as well as lots of other things, also about the whole self-mastery over our mindset. And she's going to be leading us on a 10-minute hypnosis to get our confidence back. I can't wait for that. And then, as I say, we have Maria Walsh, MEP, talking about, she's a European advocate for the whole topic of inclusion and diversity. And she's going to be speaking about that in relation to workplaces. Then we have the wonderful Nella speaking about the neurodivergent talent. And myself, I'm going to be speaking about sustainability in the workplace, sustainability with your people. So if you do ESGs, it's the S, it's the social part. Again, it's about this. How do we, nurture our people? Very much like what Shay speaks about. I'll be talking about it at an individual level, again, about, supporting the people we have in our companies. Nella, it was an absolute pleasure to have you here on the LinkedIn Live. Thank you for giving up your time this morning to talk to us, to give us all this information. And I look forward to having you at the event in Galway on April the 25th in Platform 94.
Me too. Thank you, Dolores. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Nella, and we'll talk soon.
Mm-hmm.